Jupiter enters Cancer June 9th, 2025, where it will be for a whole year until June 29th, 2026. This is the best astrological news of 2025, hands down. Arguably the best astrological news of the decade. Hello, my name is Eliane-Nicole. I'm your astrologer and tarot reader, and in this video I am going to break down what it means for us on planet Earth when the planet of grace and good fortune and abundance and expansion is traveling through its exaltation in Cancer, the sign of, family and mothers and sensitivity and emotion and home and safety. But before I get into the full translation, and I'm also going to include some tarot at the end, so definitely stick around to the end. But before I get into the full translation, I want to say if you're watching this on Instagram, I'm just going to post the first 3 minutes here. The entire video will be available on my YouTube channel, Eliane-Nicole. My YouTube channel is my name, Eliane-Nicole. Please find me there. I will put a link in the profile bio of my Instagram to get there. And there's also a link in my profile bio of my Instagram to book a reading with me. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Please hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new video. Please like, please comment, please share. And it just helps me grow the channel and my business and puts me in a position to continue to give these free astrological offerings. If you're watching this on Instagram, please make sure that you're following astrology.tarot.Eliane-Nicole. Please like, please comment, please share. It is free for you, very helpful to me. Now, without further ado, I want to talk about Jupiter into Cancer. Jupiter coming into Cancer in particular is bringing immense fertility, creativity, sensitivity, philanthropy, generosity, empathy, a lot of really great things, joyful family experiences. That's the overall general energy of Jupiter in Cancer. It will affect different people differently depending on their own personal astrology. And in this video, I plan to talk about who it will affect the most strongly, as well as who might have, more of the shadow experiences that Jupiter can bring. Every planet, even the benevolents, Jupiter and Venus, who are usually associated with all of the good and the great things that we like, that we love in life, have their shadow side. Just like the malefics that are associated with some of the harder aspects of life also have their benefits, and we need them. And so, we can't ever get into, astrology teaches us that we can't not ever get into black and white thinking about anything. We can't, get too into binary thinking about everything. The life in this 3D realm that we live in is on a spectrum. But, I will say that myself, and all astrologers are very, very excited for this transit because it is kind of bringing a salve and a sense of relief and a sense of healing and warmth to areas of our lives that we may have been experiencing a lot of adversity in the months of, August through May, because we had an extended Mars in Cancer transit. And so Mars, the god of war, was traveling in a certain house in our charts, depending on your rising sign. And if you don't know your rising sign, I urge you to contact me for a reading and have your chart done. Everyone should have their chart done at least once in their lives. I even think you should work with your chart regularly over time and get transit readings every 3 to 6 months and really get to know your chart. But anyway, I'm saying that to say, and if you do know your chart, then you know the house that Cancer rules in your chart. You know you had a Mars and Cancer story. And for a lot of people, that had to do with a lot of very sensitive family situations, either around family, the home, security, safety, privacy. For some people, it had to do with health issues. But, now Jupiter, the planet of grace and good fortune and abundance, is coming into that house. And so Jupiter is kind of bringing a salve and a relief, kind of like the gifts that come after dealing with an adverse situation. And because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, I will say, I want to talk about who this is the most personal for. So obviously for Cancers, this is going to be a very personal transit. If you have a Cancer sun, if you have a Cancer rising, if you have a Cancer moon, those 3 placements are going to be impacted by this transit the most. And it's going to be really beautiful. It's a 29-degree transit, so it starts at 0 and goes to 29 degrees from now until the next year. It will have a retrograde period that I'll come back and do another video about it another time, because I don't want this video to be too long. But suffice it to say that anyone who has a Cancer sun, moon, or rising at some point between this, next year, you are going to have a Jupiter conjunction. This can be very fertile for people who are wanting to conceive or, who are wanting to get pregnant, but it can also be very fertile for people who are trying to grow anything, whether it's growing a garden, growing money in a bank account, growing a family, expanding in a home, growing hair, whatever it is that you want to grow. This transit, as it comes into a conjunction for people who have Cancer, are going to be in just the excellent astrology for that. It's also going to impact Scorpios and Pisces by a trine. And so this is going to really be a very, again, fertile, creative, possibly, mystical in some cases, very beneficial transit as it comes into trine by degree with your natal placements. And for Virgo and Taurus, it will be forming a sextile with your natal placements. And so at some point during the year-long journey, it is going to form, be when it hits the degree of your personal placements. The sextile will create opportunities, lots of opportunities, creative opportunities, opportunities for growth, opportunities for expansion, opportunities for conception of babies or creative ideas that can grow and manifest in the world. And so those are the signs that are going to love it the most. For Capricorns, it's going to be at an opposition to your signs, as well as, and for so for Capricorns, specifically, the opposition usually involves the shadow qualities of the transit. When you're dealing with the shadow qualities of Jupiter, it can be the types of things that come from, even sunshine burns if you get too much. It can be the kinds of things that come from, overdoing things, overindulgence, overconfidence, or even the, the shadow side of fame and success and money, like the golden handcuffs, like, You know, sometimes when people reach those heights, it can become a prison, which brings me to the fact that, well, I want to talk about the Jupiter-Saturn square, but first I want to say Aries and Libra placements, sun, moon, or rising, or any personal planets placements, you will be getting the squares to Jupiter at some point. And so again, sometimes the squares can bring the shadow side of Jupiter, but usually that has to do with too much of a good thing. You know, you're eating rich food, so you're gaining weight. Jupiter can expand the waistline. You know, you're making a lot of money, so maybe you're overspending or overindulging, or, you know, it can be like conspicuous consumption. Like, it can be showing off, it can be overconfidence, it can, you know, Jupiter is just like overdoing it in some way when he's in the shadow aspect. So, you know, again, this is something that, depending on your own personal astrology, it hits everybody differently. But I want to go on to say that in general, Jupiter has to do with big picture wisdom. It has to do with morality. It has to do with philosophy. It has to do with purpose. It has to do with belief systems. I think I've mentioned grace and good fortune. Those are really common keywords. Benevolence, opportunity, expansion. In people or in figures, Jupiter in Cancer in particular represents the goddess, the divine mother. Cancer rules mothers. It can be, in people in our lives, Jupiter can be your godmother, your grandmother. It can be a female benefactor or a creative philanthropist. Jupiter in general, it can be spiritual leaders like priests, rabbis, imams. It can be theologians. It can be professors, judges, gurus, godparents, grandparents, benefactors, and philanthropists. While Jupiter is in Cancer, he is directing our destiny towards Cancer values and Cancerian things like family and home, security, safety, coziness, privacy, domesticity, sensitivity, intuition, empathy, compassion. This is a 12-year, rare 12-year emotional expansion, because it takes Jupiter 12 years to come around. So to be in its exaltation, you know, I think this is, again, I can't stress enough, for people who are trying to conceive, this is one of the most fertile transits that we're going to get for 12 years. So, you know, Jupiter in Pisces, which we had in 2022, was very fertile, but Jupiter in Cancer is very, very fertile. And we don't have a transit this fertile for many, many years to come after this. So if you're a person who is wanting to conceive and have children, this is a great optimum transit to jump on that. You know, I was thinking when I saw that President Trump was giving, talking about possibly giving stimulus checks to people having children, I was like, he knows the astrology and he wants to take credit for the baby boom that's going to come because of Jupiter in Cancer. Because I do think that Jupiter in Cancer is going to bring a baby boom. I think a lot of people are going to get pregnant. I think pregnancy numbers are going to soar for this year. I don't think that they're going to stay at that number, but I think for this year in particular, we're going to have a jump up. So anyway, yeah, I talked about, I think, how it's going to bring shifts, a lot of energy shifts to this house in our chart where Mars was. It's like this place where we experienced all this adversity from August until, you know, May of 2024. Suddenly we're going to be getting all these gifts and blessings in that same area. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like all related. And you know, now Jupiter is good, but again, it's the planet of expansion, and so sometimes it expands things if it comes into a square or in opposition with certain things in your chart. Like if it's traveling through your first house, it can expand your waistline, or your sixth house, which also can do with your body. But like if it's traveling through your second house, it'll expand your bank account. You know, if it's traveling through your fourth house, maybe there's expansion in your home. If it's traveling through your seventh house, maybe it's like expansion within your relationship, or, you know, it's bringing joy or gifts or blessings in that area. So depending on the house it's in, it brings expansion in different people's lives in different ways. However, if it's at a square or an opposition to one of your personal planets, it's in the house of health or your body, you know, Jupiter can also expand things like tumors. And so it's not always good. Nothing is ever all bad or good. It depends on how it's being used, or the angle that the light is shining into our charts because of our own personal astrology. I just realized I forgot to put my rings on. I feel naked. But I want to keep going. I'm 15 minutes in. I don't want this to be too long. Oh yeah, I was thinking Jupiter in Cancer could be the birth of a new guru onto the scene for the collective, but a female guru who rises in popularity over this year. Let's see. So Jupiter in Cancer, even though overall it's this beautiful aspect, I do have to say the initial entrance, one of the very first aspects it makes, well, let me just say, right before it enters Cancer, it's going to be at the 29th degree of Gemini, and the sun is going to meet it at the 29th degree of Gemini just before, so on the 8th, just before it moves into Cancer. And so this is extremely good news. This is big news and good news that is coming right before Jupiter enters Cancer. And then Jupiter enters into 0 degrees Cancer. And as soon as it enters, well, arguably even at 29 degrees, but it's an out of sign conjunction. It's in an applying conjunction. I mean, an applying square to Saturn. A square is a 90-degree angle. It's a hard angle. Squares are conflicts or challenge that require action. So Jupiter entering the square to Saturn is part of a bigger story, again, that has been unfolding since August of 2024. This is the third and final square of Jupiter and Saturn. The first two squares were on the Gemini Pisces angle. This one is that's the last one, is the first one that's on the Cancer Aries angle. So when these squares were going on through the Jupiter Pisces angle, you know, they were exact August 19th and Christmas Eve. It was on the mutable axis. So it was all about systems and structures shifting and changing in the world, a changing of the guards, but also in our lives. And it was this mutable energy. So it was like everything was changing. Nothing was staying the same. Everything was so uncertain, and it was requiring so much adaptability and so much flexibility and pivoting and shifting gears and all of that. And that went on, you know, it kind of built to a crescendo, I think, at the end of last year. And then, you know, this year, you know, at the end of last year, Pluto also moved into Aquarius, kind of being like, okay, you know, we're in this new era as the end of November came. And then, you know, Neptune has now moved into Aries, you know, new era, new world, like everything is pointing towards that. And, you know, then Saturn joined Neptune in Aries. You know, they're just visiting for the summer, but they're foreshadowing and telling us a story of what's to come in a more profound and significant way in 2026 to 2028. And, you know, and now recently Venus moved into Taurus. That's just a 3-week transit. It's a short transit, but it's very sweet. And then Jupiter moves into Cancer for an entire year. And this is like, I just think it's important to note the sweetness that is around us right now. These are the good old days, believe it or not. Like, and so, you know, some of this astrology over this next year is really as good as it gets. And, you know, yes, the world is on fire. As I mentioned, you know, Saturn and Neptune are both in Aries. Aries is you know, ruled by Mars, the god of war. You know, I mean, that is, you know, a 2.5 war. That is a 14-year war. Like, the world is a shit show, no question about it. And, you know, the world is going to continue worlding, and life is going to continue lifing. But what these transits are telling me is that there is a lot of beauty and a lot of blessings to extract from the current times. Nothing is ever all good and nothing is ever all bad. And so even though the world seems to be falling apart around us, you know, if you watch the news cycle, you know, people are crazy. The world is crazy. There's so much pain. There's so much suffering. But we do have an opportunity to key into, you know, love and benevolence and harmony and beauty within our lives, and to share that with others and to share that with the world, not to hoard that, not to hide from the atrocities and the horrors of the world, but to fortify ourselves, to fortify our family, our friends, anyone in our community and in our sphere, so that we are in a position to address the atrocities and the horrors and the inequities and the injustices of the world, so we can pour into the causes that we believe in, so that we're in a position to help others. And that's what I love about Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer is like filling our cups up to the brim, so full that they pour over in abundance, that we can't help, that whoever's around us, we can't help. Not only, you know, that the benevolence and the benefits are just dripping all around, pouring into everyone around us, the causes we believe in, our friends, our families, our loved ones, you know. And so that is the vision of Jupiter in Cancer. You know, again, it's very fertile, it's full of growth, it's full of expansion, but that square to Saturn that it hits in the beginning, you know, there is this changing of the guards, and it's moved from the mutable period to now we're building the new future. It's a cardinal sign. This is initiation, but it can show that there's a conflict or a challenge in building this future in this Aries. And you know, and it's like Jupiter is the vision and Saturn is the reality. Jupiter is expansion, Saturn is the rules. Yeah, but you know, you need to get these permits, and you have to have this, like, you know, all the things that need to be in place, you know. And Jupiter just wants to grow, and Saturn's like, no, but these are the rules, these are the regulations, slow down, be careful, you know. And so that push-pull is going on when Jupiter first moves into Cancer. And then after that, and that forms exact on the 15th, but it's already building the 9th as soon as Jupiter comes in. And then on the 19th, it hits or on the 11th is the full moon. So the full moon of Sagittarius is on the 11th. I'm going to do a separate video about that. It's, but I want to just say here, Jupiter is the host. Jupiter in Cancer is the host of that full moon. And so Jupiter in Cancer is a very benevolent, exalted host of the full moon coming up on the 11th. So I really love that for the full moon, but I'm going to do a detailed full moon video, and I'm going to keep going on with this video so that it's not too long. And in this video, I'm just going to do the transits, the aspects that Jupiter's making up until August, and then I'll come back and do more Jupiter when we get closer to September, because I don't want this video to be too long. But I do want to say that on the 18th is the square to Neptune, And this is the opening square of a conjunction that happened in 2022. I think like April of 2022 they conjoined. Maybe it was like February through April 2022. So you can think about what was going on in your life now. And now this is the opening square of that Jupiter-Neptune things storyline. And this can have to do again with the birth of something new in your life. It can be, you know, the birth of a film or a creative project, a birth of a baby. It could have been a wedding, or, you know, it's kind of the birth of joy, idealism, a new dream. And, you know, the shadow side can be fantasy or illusion or delusion, but this is the opening square. And so the story is leveling up in some way. It's meeting a point where some kind of action needs to be taken to build or create the future in some way. And I just want to call out a couple of key dates that I think are really extremely days of grace and luck and good fortune. If you want to look to those days, and look specifically in the house that Cancer rules in your chart. But on the 24th of June, Jupiter is conjoining the Sun. That is beautiful day of grace, good fortune, good luck, opportunity, warmth, family joy. On August 11th, it'll be conjunct Venus. This is beautiful for love and romance and beauty and art and justice. Beautiful day, great luck day, day of good fortune. And yeah, it's very active in early September, so I'll come back right before it trines the North Node in September and do a whole new video for that. But, you know, in the tarot, Cancer is really associated with the Chariot and the major arcana, and this has to do with driving forward towards our goals with, you know, with focus and with, you know, just resolve and, you know, being able to kind of harness whatever dualities or oppositional energies may exist in the situation, able to harness those energies and steer the course with your eyes on the prize, on the vision, you know, driving, rolling straight for it. You know, in the Thoth Tarot, the Chariot holds the Holy Grail, you know, and so, you know, this is just a beautiful transit, a beautiful moment, and yeah, a time to really go for your goals, you know, go for the vision, keep your eyes on the prize. And then fortune is associated with Jupiter in the Thoth Tarot. And so Jupiter, you know, the Wheel of Fortune it's interesting because the Wheel of Fortune is round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down on that Wheel of Fortune. It's ever changing, it's ever fluctuating. Nothing is ever staying the same. This too shall pass. The good times will pass, the bad times will pass. And so we can't get too overconfident and too big-headed and up on ourselves, which is Jupiter, you know, the inflated ego. Jupiter can expand the ego sometimes. You know, if we're on top of the world, we can't get too, you know, out there, inflated. And just as well, if we're on the bottom of the wheel, it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that, you know. You will rise again. The tides of fortune are always changing. This is all temporal. None of this stays the same. Everything is in flux. Everything is always changing. And so, you know, we do need to be humble in the face of, you know, blessings. And yeah, that's what the Wheel of Fortune makes me think of. And then also because of the square to Saturn, it makes me think of just that, you know, expansion and contraction that can happen in life. We're not always high, you know. Jupiter and squaring Cancer represents that push and pull, you know, between highs and lows, between complexity and simplicity, between expansion and growth, between idealism and realism, you know, between all of these things, you know, good and bad, positivity and negativity, like whatever it is, that's the friction that Jupiter and Saturn represent. They're kind of like opposing energetics. And so, but they're coming together in a square, which is a 90-degree angle, different than an opposition. Again, people who have Capricorn placements will be experiencing Jupiter opposition at some time in the next year. But yeah, I like it. I love it. You know, it's like, and so when I read these together, it's like, yes, go for the vision. You know, the vision is important to both of these cards. You know, the Chariot is about the vision and the action that it takes to get to the vision. The Wheel of Fortune is about the vision, but also it's about the higher wisdom of life that understands that there's always cycles, and that what goes up must come down, and that we have to trust the divine order and the divine timing on everything. And then what we do get to the Holy Grail, we can't let our egos get inflated. We have to, you know, take it all with a grain of salt, because just as quick as we're up, the wheel goes around, always. And so that's the nature of the universe. And Jupiter is very interested in universal truth. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I will be back in September for a Jupiter Part 2 video where I'll talk about the transits through September and November. But for now, look out for, you know, I have a Venus in Taurus video that's up. It hasn't gotten a lot of views. Help me with the views. Please watch that. It's a 3-week transit. It's wonderful. It's beautiful, paired with this Jupiter in Cancer. Again, this is one of my favorite pockets of the year. So I want everyone to really recognize all of the blessings that are around us right now, so that you don't miss out on really savoring and appreciating this time. And yeah, please contact me for a reading. I read on Zoom, so I can read for people anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. I would love to look at your chart with you and look at where Jupiter is traveling through your chart, and where it's aspecting your planets beautifully, and where it's going to be bringing a lot of great expansion and love and grace and mercy and wonderful things into your life in the coming year. So there's a link in the description below to book a reading with me. I will also put my email there so that you can reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you don't see any times on my website that are times that you want to book. And again, make sure that you're subscribed and that you hit the notification bell, like, comment, help me in the algorithm, please. If you would like to buy me a coffee or a tea or a croissant as a thank you, I will put my Venmo, and you can make a donation through Venmo. And yeah, just in general, again, this is just one of the most beautiful transits, certainly of 2025, arguably of the whole decade of the 20s. And so, yeah, let's all just maximize this opportunity and maximize the beauty of this moment. Thank you so much for joining me. See you soon.